in the wake of Tony Blinken declaring that 90% of a ceasefire deal is worked out and that they're almost there, Israel carries out a series of heinous massacres and attacks Syria, killing dozens of civilians in another escalatory attack. The civilians were killed in Moasi, which is one of the tent camps that have been constructed because Israel's military told Palestinians in Gaza to go there because it was a so-called safe zone. And they keep bombing these places with 2,000-pound bombs, the size of the crater the bomb created in this tent camp. Whole families were eliminated. Scores. I mean, we don't know how many people are dead. They're digging for the dead with their hands because there aren't enough tools. Scores have been killed.
That's the biggest crater I can recall seeing, at least in a long time. I remember early on you had stuff like this, but I mean, as you said, this looks like the 2,000-pound bombs that the Biden administration claimed that they were not letting Israel use.
Right. They paused it and then they let them have it again. And so this is what they're doing with it. And yeah, there was a giant, go ahead.
Well, just for all we know, it could even be larger than 2,000. I mean, like, why wouldn't Israel use something even worse, given that they have full impunity from the U.S. and full support? And they keep saying we wouldn't be able to do this without the U.S. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. And there were previously giant craters in the Maghazi camp in December, attack that killed something like 150. Israel couldn't even explain who the target was there. And before that, the Jabalia camp massacre, GBU, heavy bombs were dropped in the middle of the Jabalia refugee camp. They said they eliminated some Hamas commander that no one had ever heard of. No consequences. And now there's just a collective shrug. I remember those massacres were reported in corporate US media, but we've moved on in anticipation of the debate tonight. And at the same time, Israel's attacking Syria. They've been attacking Syria for years and years and years now. Hundreds of attacks have been waged on Syria, but these are some of the most intense. Unprecedented attack on Syria today led to damage in 4 major cities: Homs, Damascus, Hama, and Tartus, including a major fire in the city of Masayaf and Hama. I mean, yeah, they're attacking deep into Syria.
And I just want to show how the New York Times reported the latest massacre in Gaza, the one that left all those craters, a massive crater. Oops, that's not it. 1 second. This is it. This is what the Times said. A civil defense official in Gaza says at least 40 people were killed. Israel says it targeted militants. And I think the term the Times also used was a Hamas command center, which was like a new one. I hadn't seen that one before. A Hamas command center.
He said, she said.
Yeah. Hamas command and control center, Hamas command and control node. So basically, anytime Israel carries out a slaughter, all Israel has to do is say that they were targeting some undefined Hamas command center, and the New York Times will print it as basically as fact and give it equal weight to what we know, which is Israel slaughtered a bunch of civilians.
Yeah. And they're still using according to the Hamas controlled health ministry death toll. They're still inserting that caveat to give readers an off ramp so they don't have to be horrified. Oh, the terrorists are just making it up. They're just holding baby dolls up that are dead. I mean, it's a shocking display.
And just to stress, this was one of those so-called humanitarian zones, right?
Yep.
Where Palestinians are told to go and told that they'll be safe from Israeli attacks. But Israel's made clear that that's just not true. Humanitarian zone means killing zone because Israel repeatedly attacks them.
They keep doing it again and again, attacking these humanitarian quote unquote safe zones that they've created. So essentially they've created a series of death camps throughout Gaza, and the US just keeps supplying the camp guards with more ammo.
This is the Times. Again, Gazan authorities reported huge craters and entire families missing after Israel said it struck a humanitarian zone to target a militant center. Okay. So it doesn't matter if it's a supposed humanitarian zone. If we can claim now there's a militant center there, then it's a killing zone. No longer a humanitarian zone.
I mean, even if there was a militant center there, how does that justify slaughtering entire families? That's the logic that the New York Times is accepting with that kind of wording.
100%.
This was something the US government did not used to accept, even under the George W. Bush administration.
True.
When Israel assassinated Al-Qassam commander Salah Shahada in an apartment block and killed everyone in the apartment building with a 2,000-pound bomb, the George W. Bush administration condemned that. They also condemned it because Israel broke a ceasefire deliberately by doing that. Now it's just kind of, hey, that's what we need to do. Human shields. The Biden administration used the language of human shields again and again. I asked Vedant Patel, State Department spokesman, why do you keep calling them human shields? You're justifying the attacks on civilians. And he said, we never said that they are human shields. We said that Hamas uses them as human shields. He literally said that to me, as if there's some difference in their deployment of that term. And then this is all the consequence of the Biden administration accepting the Israeli objective, the Netanyahu objective, which actually goes even further beyond regime change to the total annihilation of Hamas, which means anyone affiliated with Hamas can be slaughtered. Which that's like, fascist logic. It's Pinochet logic. It's like put your entire opposition into camps, disappear them logic. And that's what the Biden administration has accepted.
Well, to quote Layla Al-Arian, the daughter of the aforementioned Sami Al-Arian, she's a journalist with Al Jazeera. She said that basically Israel's logic is that nothing justifies October 7th, but October 7th justifies everything. And that's pretty much the logic adopted, including being able to kill untold numbers of civilians if Israel can say that there's like a member of Hamas somewhere in the vicinity, which is just like where did that concept come from? It's pure terrorism. It's worse than terrorism. It's basically mass murder, and yet totally acceptable now since October 7th.
And the attacks in Syria, we scarcely hear about them. I was watching interviews actually on Press TV with some of the survivors in a hospital. One of them was a firefighter who had arrived to try to rescue people, and his vehicle was attacked in a double tap strike by an Israeli drone to attack and kill the rescuers. I don't know. Some of the Syria trolls who used to claim to support Palestine, but really are just focused on regime change in Syria, privately celebrate those Israeli attacks. But they're increasingly as savage as the ones we see in Gaza.
Yeah. The Syrians, like Israeli strikes on Syria have just become totally normalized by pretty much everybody because, and there's of course like the neocon establishment, they support that obviously because Syria is part of the axis of resistance. But then on the left, because of the divisions over Syria and what a toxic issue that is, and the intimidation of people who criticize the dirty war, a lot of people just stay silent. They just see that the Israel, like they don't connect Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank and mass murder campaign to Israel's regular attack on Syria, a member of the axis of resistance. Like that part is so normalized that even now when people talk about the axis of resistance in a positive way, or just to describe it, they omit Syria because the dirty war in Syria basically normalized Israel and the US's right to terrorize Syria. So that part just kind of gets overlooked all the time.
Definitely. And as I said, there have been hundreds of attacks on Syria. And after 15 years of dirty war, there's very little Syria can do. And it's worth pointing out that the Syrian quote unquote rebels who were cheered on by large sections of the US left, one of the first things they set out to do was destroy Syria's anti-aircraft batteries, to destroy its SAM batteries. They destroyed like 50% of Syria's anti-aircraft capacity to lay the groundwork for Israel to attack with impunity. While their leadership...
and that's just a quick thing. That's why Israel presumably gave them weapons, because I'm sure Israel appreciated it.
Yeah, completely.
And money too, and money. Yeah,
weapons, money, and while their leadership, the Syrian opposition, Burhan Ghalion, and these characters, the exiled opposition, were promising to normalize with Israel if the West would just support them.